I want to welcome everyone to another episode of What Drives You. Today, I'm joined by an esteemed guest that is in a space that I'm not 100% familiar with, but I've had some curiosity, so I wanted to bring him on. He goes by the Bäron. Uh, he is a professional BDSM and has a book that he's working on that he'll be releasing later this year. But the Bäron, how are you doing today?
Good evening. Appreciate you having me, man.
Perfect, man. Well, first, I want to kind of like get to know your story. Like, who are you and how did you get the name the Baron? And what's a little bit about your background?
Well, that's a significantly longer story, but I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible.
Hmm.
I've been in the lifestyle being both those who don't know, both the swinger, the BDSM, and the poly life. I myself am a BDSM practitioner. I have been for almost 13 years. I am what is called a traditionally trained Dom, which means I had a mentor throughout the greater portion of the time that I spent in the lifestyle, roughly about 8 years. Um, and throughout a good portion of North Texas, Oklahoma, but primarily throughout Louisiana, I've been involved in what's called private play, which is kind of the underground circuit, stuff you don't catch on social media.
Hmm.
It's very much so hush hush, invite only kind of thing. It's not a 50 Shades, I'll tell you that. It's not that kind of thing. But um, definitely a whole lot of people that don't necessarily look like us, and so about the last 4 years, I made a decision, to kinda break away from private play and get more into what we call top side, which is the social media and out more, at the exoticas and the bigger events and just kinda being more seen and more transparent on that end, to be a voice and, kinda bring something different, and as a cishet man, pushing a lot of the boundaries of what we kinda do with the whole hypermasculine stuff and what we can and cannot do in exploring our sexuality and exploring different parts of the kink and BDSM world, and pushing it a little further. As
Hmm.
far as kind of how I got into it, okay, I got into it because I am honestly, I feel like when people ask me that, I fell in my feelings, right? So like this wasn't something that I just kind of decided one day I wanted to do. I identify as being demisexual. Funny as hell because most people don't know what that is, and when you say that, most most black women they look at you and be like, "What does that mean?" Because there's a lot going on in this world, right?
Yeah,
But
definitely.
demisexual is basically an individual who finds a level of sexual arousal or captivation from emotional enthrallment, emotional involvement. So I
Mm.
care about you, right? You show me or extend a level of passion towards me that makes me feel something towards you. Doesn't matter necessarily how physically attractive you are. The baddest of the bad, it don't matter. If I don't have a connection of some sort, it does not
Mm.
do anything, right? So I was, honestly, man, if I'm keeping it real, I was about 16, 17 years old, and I'm sure you was at that age. We were all at that age at one point.
Mm.
Every time the wind blow, you know what I mean, your boy downstairs was hard as a rock, man, but when it came down to, like, actually getting involved, I mean, of course, I've had my experiences, but I kept trying to figure out when it came to randoms or people I didn't necessarily know, they were super attractive, but, like, I wasn't rising to the occasion. I thought something was wrong with me. I'm like, "Yo, I'm 16, 17, like, what's going on with me?"
Mm.
But then the very first time my girlfriend, my high school sweetheart, got on her knees and put her hands behind her back, and she was like, "Whatever would you have me do, sir?" Like,
Mm.
boy, solid as a rock. I said, "Damn, what is this?" Like, hey, whatever the hell this is, I need more of this. That shit had me like, "Oof, what was that?" And it just felt like I got bit by the radioactive spider from them, man. I was like, "How do I indulge? What does this mean? What is this?" I was Googling, I was getting a hold of things, and I found myself getting involved in groups, and as
Hmm.
I went off to college, man, it just got more and more extensive. I married across my first dominant, and well, technically she was a dame, and the world was history. Scenario. It
Uh,
was. I felt like I was kind of built for it, man. It was just like I had to have something to look.
no, that's interesting because I'm probably like whatever the opposite of a demisexual is. That is who I I don't know if I identify, but it's how I've lived life. Like there's been instances where it was like great. It's like someone, so the baddest of the bad, like you said. Sometimes they weren't all that bad, but if time was ready to go, then I was ready to go and perform. I've done some
Right.
scenes, some stuff in the lifestyle as well, and
Mhm.
um, with my past partner and stuff like that. And so yeah, and she was always like, you always seem
You
to have
always ready to go.
right. You
You
always seem.
always ready to go.
I mean, and that was honestly that was some of the issues with some of the other people that we were dealing with, like where
Yeah,
the man wasn't ready. But for me, it was
yeah.
just like, all right, well, it's time to.
Time to go, it's time to go. And I look, hats off to the brothers that's like that, man. I
Hmm.
just it's not about anything being wrong or right. It's just everybody's a little different. And
Yeah.
for me, the cheat code was BDSM, right? Like instead of me necessarily having to know, everything about you, your backstory, and have some level of emotional attachment to you, I
Hmm.
found out the cheat code in service. It's a cheat code in you subjugating yourself or having a passion for serving. That shit is passionate. Passion is a form of so that translated differently. It hit something different. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
that gave me like, okay, bet this is it, right? She could be random. We can only known each other for about an hour, but if I intrinsically feel you are dedicated to it, oh, I'm ready. What's up? What we doing?
Mm. Okay, that's interesting that you were able to find that experience, I guess, through by doing the BDSM and feeling like realizing that you can kind of get to that point. The question I like to ask is like, like kind of what makes you successful? Like what makes you, good at what you're doing? So I guess it still applies. Like what makes you like a good Dom that can, write a book about how other people can get into the lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a great. And truth be told, can't answer that question without first addressing.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing that I would need to address is that much like what we find in music, much like we find in anything out of artistic outlet or any type of art, we find ourselves scrutinizing people so heavily, whether it's musical artists, rappers, actual painters, or anybody who rises to any level of prominence, right? We as a community scrutinize so heavily, like, okay, who are you to rap about this? Who are you to write about this in poetry, or who are you this person to paint this particular type of way about this neighborhood or about this experience, about these
Hmm.
types of things? It's so much scrutiny behind the messenger, right? Not necessarily always being vigilant about what the message itself is, right? So
Hmm.
that part has always kind of bothered me, right? And I just really, as I step to it and I work with it, we've always had a problem in this community, especially specifically with people of color, where we are so focused on tearing down the messenger, we don't even hear all the liberation and the nuggets and the experience and all the great things that
Hmm.
can be helpful for us when it comes to so that part has always been problematic to me, right? Like, because nobody's good enough. You got to be 45 years in this lifestyle, have met every single person in a lifestyle. You needed to have studied under this person, that person. This person needs to have been your master. You need to come from this particular bloodline of individuals and uplines and down. And I just personally, yo, like it's
Frustrating.
if the truth is the truth, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
what's helpful for this particular person on their journey, if it's heard from me, if it's heard from the person down the block, truth is what it is. And so I feel like for me, yes, I have, 13 years in it. Yes, I spent a good portion of the time of it. As they say, the shrouds of darkness. Like I did a lot of this in places that you will never hear about, speak about, and I couldn't tell you but at the same time, the knowledge that emerged from the other side, the amount of time, the thousands of hours that have been dedicated to learning the female anatomy, the hundreds of hours that have been molded into sculpting certain levels of emotional intelligence, understanding the intersectionality of day-to-day life and how kink BDSM becomes a lifestyle that you practice 24/7, 365 is an art,
Mhm.
and how we go about implementation or play, as a lot of people talk about it, um, is the physical embodiment of what we already do. You see a show, right? People see a show. They see me throwing floggers. They see me, suspending people. They see me with fire and knives. And you see all of these amazing things that I'm doing that are aesthetically pleasing between myself and whomever I'm doing it with. But what you don't see is that my sub on the table has been cultivating her trust with me for 6, 7, 8 years, hundreds of hours between the two of us in negotiation, conversation, and certain levels of uplift in all aspects of it. I'm here in all parts. So what makes me qualified for it is I've been walking, I've been doing, I've been immersed in this since I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And it's been a part of my life for so long. Um, I've damn near been doing it longer than I've been not. So, um, and that puts me in a position where so many people have come to me in certain levels of kink coaching. I've helped out with couples and singles and done a lot of the private parts of it. But I'm like, hey, if I could take those same nuggets, I could take those same things and drop those nuggets in something that you can put together and read in a good 8, 9 hours and do about 2 to 3 hours worth of self-reflection, and now you can speak this language, like, this is better than Duolingo. Like, you could actually hear this, see this, internalize this, and now understand what this language means. I feel like giving that access to so many people about understanding themselves more clearly is just a phenomenal thing, and if I can be the catalyst for that, then who am I not to allow those people that love themselves?
No, man, that's dope. Like when I asked that question, you know, a lot. You're right. In our community, we often like to tear down people, but I like to come to approach things from a more of a feast mentality. So the feast versus famine mentality. Famine is like there's not enough for everybody. Um, there's only one person, only one leader, what like that kind of mentality. Where I like to operate from the feast side of things, where I think there can be multiple people I can learn from everyone. Part of the reason why I started this channel and like talking to different people is because I feel like I can learn something from any person, whether they're the janitor to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Everyone can kind of teach a lesson. So I do like that you are trying to challenge that status quo, I guess, a little bit, especially within our community. Talk to me a little bit about like what it's like being black in the BDSM space, because as you said, it's not something normally that's within our community.
Honestly, man, it's being kind of like being one of the only kind of chosen individuals in any space of like true liberation and freedom. You feel a certain void knowing that everyone around you does not come from the walk of life that you come from. They don't appreciate the same things that you appreciate. And oftentimes, yes, you find a level of comfort and rhythm, but you never quite feel fully safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know that there's a certain level of fetishization that happens. You know that certain people are going to continue to kind of be where they are with this, and it kind of it makes you feel a bit odd knowing that if this person, as much as they're looking you in your eyes and they're desirous and they want to do this and want you to do that to them and they want to please you and for hours want to do whatever they want to try to do and and be subjugated by you and taken by you and ravished by you. But I know for a fact that if you were just walking down the goddamn street and had some regular clothes on, you clutch your purse. That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that idealism that we can do um, something so vulnerable, and you would
Mhm.
subject yourself in all aspects. I mean, butt ass, however it is, to any whim I have, in front of an audience of 30, 40, sometimes 100 people, you'd be willing to do that. But if we met as strangers in the street, your instantaneous reaction would have been, "What does he want from me?" And I'm unsafe. So it's a weird duality at times, not having other individuals who understand that plight,
Yeah.
right? Or other people who understand what that means, and I think that's part of the reason why I was pushing so hard to challenge the status quo of it all,
Mhm.
because to me, black and brown people need this far more. If you can't be safe in the comfort of your bedroom, where in the world free and liberated in the comfort of your bedroom, where the hell are you going to feel liberated and free?
Mhm.
That's supposed to be, if anything else, your domain, your house, your
Yeah.
place of sanctity is supposed to be the place you can be, whomever you choose to be, however you choose to be. And if that place still has restraints, you're never ever letting that, that mask down. So being able to have more people around you that feel that way, it's a phenomenal feeling.
Mhm.
That's what the goal for everybody is, to feel that full level of liberation and to be understood in that moment.
No, man, that's dope. Like I like that perspective of like if you can't be free in your own bedroom, then where can you be free? Uh, nah, that's really deep. That's got my like wheels turning just kind of thinking about it. But so I guess my next question that and I'm just asking questions now out of curiosity. Like I normally have written questions and stuff, but like some of the stuff that you're saying is like really got me. It just got the wheels turning. Like
Fire away, man. I understand. I'm here for it. So I didn't clear the schedule to get through it. So
yeah. Um. So tell me, like I guess for someone who might be interested in this kind of experiences, because like you said, if you can't be free in your bedroom, where can you be free? What are some like where would you suggest someone like start looking or start um, learning outside of the book that you have coming out? But like, what are some good places that people can kind of starting to get to know?
well, I'm gonna say, first and foremost, I myself and about 2 to 3 dozen other people have poured quite a bit. So I'm not gonna necessarily move past the book. I'm gonna say the book is actually designed to be that first start, right? Because
Mm,
quite literally, the question that you asked is the question that I've been getting the most over the course of my time within the lifestyle. Really been me listening to someone, we call them 101. Think about back in your school days with 101, 201, 301,
hmm
going all the way
yeah.
up to 501. So for me to be what is called a 501 individual who, teaches and what have you, I've gotten a lot of people in my inbox or after I drop a new feature or a new scene or something of the sort on either Twitter or Instagram. I get
Hmm.
a lot of people in my inbox just like, I want to do this. I've seen this. I kind of want to know about this. Where do I start? Where do I start? It's usually the go to kind of piece to it. And so that's why I created this, and I wrote this.
Okay.
The way that this goes about, it reads a bit like Hill Harper, Letters to a Brother, a young
Hmm.
brother, kind of meets Chicken Noodle Soup for the soul, right? So it kind of has a kind of vibe to it of an open letter from a big brother ish type pink big brother feel to a younger sister, right?
Hmm.
Not younger in age, but younger in experience, right? So the idea is that there are a plethora of things out here that you're trying to avoid pitfall. Uh, Things like sub frenzy, which by definition is when an individual is relatively new to the lifestyle and they find themselves wanting to be in a dynamic or be involved with someone, dynamic being, kink relationship or BDSM relationship, all
Hmm.
dynamics. Um, for you to take that and want to be involved so badly that you're overlooking red flags. It's kind of something similar to kind of the frenzy that people get in when they want to get married, right? They start
Right.
getting super pressed about certain things, overlooking the red flags. Let's overlook the button in mom and things of that nature. I'm gonna just get to the altar. That's the finish line. And
Mm.
it's similar to that in the sense that it's not a finish, honestly, a starting. This is the beginning of something. This is the beginning of me curating and creating and being a part of something. So to this book specifically, it does highlight some of the chapters that I kind of get into is the focus on mental health, right? That's the very first chapter that I work on, is mental health. And so the subtitle to it is that this is therapeutic, not therapy, right? So
Mm.
understanding that where you stand and what kind of work you've done on yourself will really speak to the trajectory that you're going to have in this lifestyle. How can you unpack a good portion of what you know within yourself? And how is that going to now manifest in the people that you're going to attract, the people that you have to weed through, and the people you have to have a level of discernment? Even getting into parts of, chapter 9 and 10 that are talking about kink chemistry, which is different than your BDSM chemistry. Just because we like the same physical manifestation, I love to flog, you love to get flogged, does not necessarily mean, because BDSM, by definition, speaks to power exchange. This is how I handle you. Do I show up in responsibility and in charge, and
Mhm.
you give that authority and that charge to me? That's power, right? And so the ethos and the emotional intelligence of an individual and how that compatibility works with you can be completely separate than how we physically manifest it. Those are two different things, right? How I
Mhm.
talk to you, how I text you, how I call you, how I make you feel seen can be a very different thing than how it feels underneath the flame or underneath the block, right? So, though understanding the discernment between those things, it's a lot of this, 90% of this is mental. It's a
Mhm.
lot about where you're putting yourself, where you're placing yourself, what things can be therapeutic for some of the traumas that you may have been through in life, what things
Right.
can be triggering. You've got to know these things to understand how you can feel fulfilled within this lifestyle. So, that's why I kind of hit a lot of these chapters to give you how do you start? Well, you start off within yourself, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't go out here looking for something. You don't know what the hell you're looking for, right? You're gonna
That's true.
find something, not even be able to evaluate whether or not this is for you, right? Like this
Yeah.
guy presents himself to you and says, "Yeah, I'm the dommiest dom of all doms," but you haven't even looked inward enough to know that him deciding to leave you on red for 2 to 3 days creates spirals for you. Now you calling in the work. And now he pops up again and you feel that dopamine hit, but you're now in an unstable, toxic environment for yourself, calling
Mhm.
yourself, delving into the lifestyle. Now you hate him, hate the lifestyle and everything else. You burn out in 6 months. Well, that had a lot to do with the fact that you didn't, quote, look inward and find where specifically you were and how that chemistry can work with individuals that present themselves. So that's the start. The start is the journey begins with you. And at what part does it begin with you? In what ways do you need someone? Which ways do you want someone? Which ways do your balance work with this? What can you offer in this, right? All of that plays a part into what your next steps in involving another person, getting to 201 actually looks like. 101 is all about self.
Hmm. No, that's really interesting. Like because I'm gonna ask this next question because it kind of ties into this point this thought I'm about to have. Just like like it's not the first thing that I would think of when it comes to like the lifestyle um, from the outside looking in. Like you don't think like it's the self discovery portion. But what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you think people have of BDSM and the lifestyle in general?
And that's funny because that is exactly where I went to with it. That's actually chapter 3. So I got into stereo. The
I promise
subtitle
I haven't
that
read the
one.
book yet.
Yeah, I know, man. You over guessing it. I mean, you asking the right questions. These are the questions that sometimes people are afraid to ask, right? And I addressed that very early in the book. As
Mhm.
chapter 3, you said it's stereotypes. You set the volume, right? To play on the stereo, right? You set the volume to how this works.
Mhm.
A lot of the common misconceptions, especially from our community, you're gonna hear the age old, that's white people, that's a white people thing. Like, who's into this
Mhm.
thing?
WB.
Just you know how it gets real, racially charged in certain ways, and a lot of times it's written off similarly to how once upon a time we used to write off mental health, right? Mental health used to be, people are crazy. and that
Mm,
person's crazy, that's it, right? We don't listen to that guy. He's crazy, and it's a very dismissive kind of standpoint to say, I'm black, I'm brown, I'm a person of color. We don't do that, right? Um, no, for all intents and purposes, there are hundreds, there are thousands of us that participate in this in one way or another, throughout the spectrum of what the discovery of kink is. But some of the misconceptions a lot of the time is that this entire uh, place is about pain. It's not all about pleasure. It's not all about, doing things in front of people. It's not all about, what kind of implements and knives and flame and all this stuff that looks so, shock value wise.
mhm,
It's not about all about calling somebody daddy. It's not all about being a sub or submissive. It's not about being a dominant. I got to show, I'm the macho man. So I am the dominant, right? Because there's a lot of guys running around here who would actually be amazing submissive or fantastic switches, but find themselves stuck in an idea of hyper masculinity because they feel
mhm,
like they won't be accepted if they don't come out as, the alpha male, right? So and by in doing so, they are denying parts of themselves and the growth that they truly would want to accept with a woman who genuinely would accept them for that, or a man that may genuinely accept themselves for that. So to that pace and to that, the stereotype that you have to be, this completely leathered down, hanging from your skin from the ceiling, getting beat into oblivion and blood everywhere type thing. That's just not how this thing goes. Now, are there places like that? Absolutely.
mhm,
Those places exist for sure because there are people into that on that end of the spectrum. But for every one place that you find that is completely and totally enthralled in the dark parts and simply pain aspects of this, you'll find 5, 6, 7 other places where there's a balance of pleasure torture. There's a balance of shifting from pleasure to pain, finding the balance between the two where they start to feel damn near the same, right? Like it's
yeah,
so many aspects of this that are just freaking wonderful, but people get caught so much into what their entry level idealisms are and how taboo this feels to not even understand that this is a full on spectrum that it can take years and years to. You're always learning.
no man, that's dope, man. I'm really listening and like just taking it all in because it's just so interesting that like this not it's not what I thought it would be. Like I don't know, like I've talked to people who say they're doms or whatever, and it's more like tied into that hyper masculinity, like you said. Like it's just like, oh well, I lift weights and I'm an alpha, rah, 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 rah. Uh, the red pill people. But I really like your perspective on how it's like, it's more than just that hyper masculinity. It's something that you could really, if you did some self exploring, you can really kind of learn more about yourself. And in some of the other positions of the lifestyle, not just always being a dom, but being a switch or a sub, whatever. So I think that's really really dope that you kind of like.
Or being a top and a bottom. It's about exploring the vocabulary to it, right? Like everybody
Mhm,
hears Dom, right? And for all intents and purposes, I watched 50 Shades years after everybody else kind of went with it. Um, and for all, I'm not gonna get too deep into that by any means, but I just enjoyed the fact that it started the conversation, right? It
mhm,
became a cultural phenomenon that shifted, for better or for worse. We can get into that later. We can get into that. That's a whole day long discussion as to what good things and bad things were had there. But it started a discussion. If you walked up to any person and since it caught fire the way it did, I mean, in any language, in any place, pretty much across the world, you could say 50 Shades and people know exactly what direction you're going. Once upon a
mhm.
time, you can still to this day say BDSM kink and people are like, what the hell is that? Right?
Yeah.
But if you say 50 Shades, they're like, oh, I know what you're talking about. Right. So it's
Mhm,
interesting that certain euphemisms have entered into our vocabulary, but people go to such lengths to try to prove, and just speaking very generally, But you have people who, women who feel like they have to be the submissive of the year, right? Or doms, quote unquote. They feel like they got to be the dommiest dom of all doms. That's one of my favorite
Mhm.
quotes. Like, I don't have an issue with people wanting to be genuinely who they are. My problem is when these situations you're embarking on a title, one that you didn't earn, right? Because that's a big part of
Mhm.
it. But two, when you're saying these things, right? And the best analogy that I've kind of worked with and helped people understand it is that for being a chef, right? You can go to the cordon bleu and start graduate top of your class. You're a chef, right? If you open a restaurant and you churn out, hundreds or dozens or thousands of people a day eating your cuisine, and you're the head guy, you're also a chef. You never you darken the doorroom of or the classroom rather of anybody's culinary school, but you are too a chef. Getting it out of the mud and learning what it takes to work in customer service, working in understanding the eye and the palate of the person that will be consuming what you're creating,
Mhm.
um, is something that's consistent from both of those tracks. So whether you're a traditionally trained dom and a mentor taught you how to do this, or you've been around long enough that someone somewhere decided to follow you and you learned with that person how to do this, whether you got it out the mud or you were taught, regardless, you put the time, effort, and energy in those 10,000 hours into being a master. And that's where the respect comes in. But you
Mhm.
don't take the word domineering, shorten it, and call yourself dominant simply because it makes you feel more masculine. Because in all actuality, you may just be a top. A person that decides to go into the bedroom is respected and treated a certain type of way. But when y'all part ways, you know, you're just Frank, right? Like you're not master dominant, Galactica. You are Frank, right? Like you go back to being a normal person talking to a normal person. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's the only amount of responsibility that you can handle is in that moment, and there's no shame in it at all. And I think a lot of times people feel like if they don't have these titles, they're not anything. And I think that translates from other parts of our culture or other people's culture as well, where you feel like you gotta be the man. If you ain't the boss, you ain't nothing. Well, that's not how it works. Everybody
Yeah.
can't be the boss. Everybody can't be the star-studded entrepreneur. And I think that everybody trying to push the envelope and become something that they haven't put the time into earning
Mhm.
puts the people following them or the people listening to them in harm's way because you have not done the dutiful work that it takes to undergo that responsibility and handle those people's intentions, those people's loyalties, and their time, and a lot of times some very delicate energies the right way. So it's more than just simply calling yourself something or taking a test and being told you're something. It's about the time, effort, and energy into identifying how best you can communicate to the world or whomever is listening where you are, what you're capable of, and what your intention. And that's a big part of where that has to transpire.
No, man, it's beautiful the way you said it. You're right. Everyone, like, the entrepreneurial lifestyle and all that kind of stuff isn't for everyone. I often like to like people like, oh, a peace king, a peace, call everyone king or queen, whatever. Um, I find fault in that thinking or that logic is because, if we were back in the old times, whatever, when there were king and queens, it was a very small family. It was, it was, you could only be born into it. It was like lineage and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't something that you can just rise up and take. Um, but there were still people that thrived in those environments that just weren't, they may not have been kings and queens. They could have been merchants. They could have been, the merchant class a lot of times had more money than the king and queen. But, the title of king and queen was what people looked up to. Um, so, it just, so that kind of applies to now where yes, like you have the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, but not everyone is meant to do that. Like not everyone can, be a farmer you need someone that's going to grow some crops. Not everyone can be, or not everyone can take care of the sheep. You need someone that's going to take the wool and make it into clothes. Like so, everyone has a position and everyone has something that they can do, and it's even down into the kink space. Um, not everyone, you might think that's where you're supposed to be because that's all you know. That's the first thing you see, especially because of like 50 Shades of Grey and stuff like that. But it's not just that. It's like there are so many other aspects to it. I like that you're trying to just broaden everyone's horizon to the many other aspects of it.
Absolutely. And I realize and I recognize that even me being able to say some of the things that I say, um, I stand on the shoulders of giants. There are people, you looking back into the roots of this. Um, I looked into the history, even like my chapter 2, talking about, what the history of BDSM actually is. Um, to even have this be brought forefront, I mean, the journey itself was excruciating, in part by the sacrifice of the LGBTQ community, right?
Right.
Once upon a time, people really were, lynched, hung, shot, beaten because they liked different things, because their preferences in terms of their sexuality was different. People were prosecuted for these types of things. And I recognize that
Mhm.
there are pillars and cornerstones within this community who have been around for, 30, 40, 50, 60 years in service to this community, still walking this earth. And my thing is, in respect to those individuals, for sure, there's never going to be a level of disrespect that comes to me for those people who have made the way.
Right.
What I hope to do, bridging the gap as a millennial, having conversations with Gen Z about what a lot of this is, and a lot of my clients and working with some of my kink coaching have been, Gen X and older, and so even easing up into the baby boomer track. So
Mhm.
for me, those people will never sit at the feet of some of these amazing individuals who have been here. My goal and what my message is about is trying to find a way to not just usher the the playful side of this, the enjoyment and the liberation side of this, but understanding the duality of the responsibilities we have for one another and the people that you're indulging with, right? The responsibility of the submissive to vet appropriately for her energy or his or her energy and how they are expected to act in a specific type of way. For that person that wants to be a dominant, to give themselves room to be a top or a service top for some years, understand what the responsibility that you have in front of you is. And yes, the shit is amazing. Yes, you're gonna have some amazing climactic moments and bust some nuts you ain't never felt like you gonna ever hit in your goddamn life, right? But at the same time, understanding that doing so responsibly when every single person around you has a level of enthusiastic consent, understanding what consent even is, and doing so in a safe space where everyone emerges from this experience pleasantly feels 10 times better than it does when people are doing things on a veil of deceit or doing things on a level of irresponsibility that has, ongoing dramatic uh, repercussion for years to come. So it's about trying to understand that intersectionality of both responsibility and liberation. And when it's done correctly, man, it's a phenomenal experience. And I really hope that by doing things like reading my books and coming to a certain part of this and you know hearing from certain parts of this message that it can spread that much more to some of the people who may only indulge once a month. They may only go get the one furry cuffs and that one starter kit, my first BDSM starter kit, but when they do it in a different way, and it
Yeah.
becomes a door opening experience that creates something new for them in their marriage or their monogamous relationship. And that's what I hope that it echoes through the community and does.
No, that's dope, man. I have two more questions that I want to ask, and the first question is a little bit more light. So the name of this channel is "What Drives You," And part of the reason behind the title is because I do like to drive. Normally I like to do these interviews actually in my car when I'm driving around. But I understand that not everyone can be in Charlotte with me. So my question is, if money wasn't an object, if you weren't worried about your any responsibilities or whatever, you can have as many subs in the car as you want, or none at all. What would be your dream car?
mean, oh wow. You talking to a car guy, my guy. I've been turning wrenches since I was like 13 years old. I gotta get my hands on one of those M6 BMW M6, man. I
Mm.
had a friend of mine that just got the M6 just alone, convertible, driving it through the hills of LA, man. When I say it was one of the most beautiful sequential scenes, I was every type of jealous jelly you can imagine. Oh god, I was upset about it, man. I was like, bro, I just want to close my eyes and be there with you. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
was crazy. But that competition package is a whole nother beast. It ain't getting but 9, 10 miles to the gallon, but good lord, she gonna sing from them pipes while she do it. It is whew. Boy, the BMW them Germans make some mighty fine vehicles. BMW. That
No,
is gotta
trust me.
happen. So I got the 535 already, man. But
Okay.
hopefully I can add that extra 100K one of these days and get a
Mm.
hold of
The
it.
M.
For
Yeah.
sure.
No, that's a really good car. That's how I know you like to drive
Hmm.
because of the type of vehicle. So like I have a Volkswagen GTI.
Okay.
Um, that was my very first car. My very first car. I
Awesome.
went through 33 years of life without a car, and I purchased
Wow.
it. It's I purchased it in my name. No, uh, all it's all me. Like, and as an immigrant, for me, that was like a big milestone. It's just like
Oh, it
being able
is,
to
man, definitely, man.
buy
See
my
your
first.
name on that title change your life, man. Definitely.
Yep. And so, but I like to drive. Like that's my thing. Is like I've always been kind of uh, a racer. Like I don't know. Fast and the Furious when that first movie first came out changed my life. But my obsession with cars started early on with James Bond.
Mhm.
I was always a James Bond fan. It's one thing that one of the core childhood memories I have with my father. One of the good ones at least is us spending time watching James Bond movies. And so the Aston Martin DBS is one of my favorites. The just anything in that styling, like European styling, but I love German engineering.
Hey,
Um,
hey, you gotta count those days beautifully as they are, man.
mhm,
Just lost my father this past June.
mm,
That was one of our main things too, man. Was working on wrenches, working on cars. Earliest memory at 8 years old, my dad said he ain't raising no useless boy. But me and my brother was changing oil, turning wrenches, everything you can imagine when it came to car maintenance and changing tires. I could change a tire in about 5 minutes flat at 10 years old. So
mm,
hats off to him and even having conversation with you. I actually drove the Aston Martin. It drive like it really against the BMW, which I
mhm.
would just rather drive a Beamer than pay for $800 a tire. Cough, cough. So
That's
I'll
like
let
I
that be. I'll let you have that one, but I'm more of a Tokyo Drift kind of guy, man. They getting crazy over there. That fam. So that was wild. I'm
I
definitely
w-
on that third installment of the franchise.
I went to Tokyo. So I moved to Tokyo in 2011. Um, and my dream was to learn how to drift. Uh, my
That's
trip,
more than a notion, man. They make it
my
look so easy.
I know it would have been crazy, but I really wanted to learn. But my experience in Japan got cut short because of the earthquake, and so it's something that I still have on my bucket list of learning of things to learn how to do. Like I have like a just a list of experiences that I want to do. I want to go to Brazil and play soccer or play football or futsal. Um, I want to I want to learn how to fly a plane like a fighter style, and I want to learn how to drift. Um, I feel like if I accomplish those things, there's also a couple others. Like I want to go to see the pyramids of Giza. I want to go down the Nile River into what is now, I think, Somalia. It was Kemet. Um,
You got a
and
hell of a bucket list, my man.
yeah,
Definitely.
I'm big on travel, but I like to just hop into vehicles and act like I'm from someplace. So um, yeah, like the
Cars are a good way to get fascinated with the culture for sure. I definitely
yeah,
have
and
to
so
double with you with the plane aspect of things as well. That was
mm,
actually something that was beckoned to me by a few of the masters I was familiar with
mm,
um, in private play was the idea um, to be in a place where you have mastered self, being able to be wherever it is on this physical plane that you want to be at any given time.
mm,
A person has not only mastered the ground, the rubber behind
that's the air.
vehicles, but you're mastering the air. You know how to navigate a ship. You know how to drive it. You know how to fly a plane. You know how to drive a car. And anywhere you choose to be in the world, you can choose to be at any given time. So that's actually been a big goal of mine as well, to getting the pilot license. I can't say I want to fly a fighter plane. That's a little different. You might have to join some armed forces for that. But personally, definitely the idea. I saw an Instagram video a few years ago, and it was an NFL player, and he just up and decided he wanted to take his family from, I think it was like North Carolina to Miami. He just decided, pulled up in some Nike slides and a few a few suitcases, man, and took his wife and his daughter, and they just hopped in the plane. It was gone. He was marking a journey and talking through the headset, and they was just gone. In a matter of a few hours, here he is, head of household, deciding that he wants his family to be where he wants his family to be, and coming out
Mm,
of the private terminal. And then part of that enlightened something crazy in me to see, people of color doing that. And I was just like, man, it's a whole different level of mastery to see it and just hear about it, and being able to do those types of things, man. So that comes from a level of self discipline and self mastery, and the intersectionality of what we talk about in BDSM, holistic,
mm.
creating the purest form of self love, which is self discipline. So that's how it all comes through. For sure, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
We're speaking the same language, man.
Yeah, I love how you tied it all together. I did find a school in like Southern California that does teach you how to dogfight without, like, you're not shooting anything down, but like you're doing like the maneuvering and stuff like that. I want to do more stuff like that because
Hats off to you, bro. I'm already
I'm
facing
an adrenaline
fears.
junkie.
I don't even like heights. So I'm like, I'm already facing fears. I ain't finna dog fight nothing, boy. I'm, I'm up
Yes,
there to get point A to point B.
yeah, I've been an adrenaline junkie most of my life.
Hey,
I've been on like every roller coaster on the East Coast. I have like as so I'm from Bermuda originally, and in Bermuda, we like to jump off cliffs into the ocean. And so, I think the highest that I've done, I've actually like dove straight in was like maybe 60, 70 feet, just flying into the air and then landing in the water. So I don't know. For me, it's just always been stuff like I I don't drive as fast as I'm comfortable doing. I drive as fast as I'm comfortable. Like everyone else around me be comfortable. Because if it was up to me, I'd probably be flying around like 100 most of the time, like, just because.
that same beam I'm telling you about, man. Cruise control on 125, bro. I cruise
Yeah.
control on 125, and people be looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I've already
Yeah.
looked. When you know the car, you know how it performs, you put the time in, and you know the engineering behind it.
Mhm.
Hey, I can get busy with it for sure.
And so yeah, and like I want to do, I have a desire to put more stuff into my car because I had a buddy. Uh, Oddly enough, we started work together when I used to work at the Apple Store, and during our training portion, we had when I met him, he had like this old like Lexus. He had some amazing sounds in it. Like he had like 16s in the trunk that faced towards the inside, and like two 12s that face out. Like it was ridiculously sound. And but it was a older car, so I'm like, okay, it's cool. Then when we went to work in the actual store, the first day he pulls up was in a Maserati quadruport, and I was like, huh? And he was like, "Oh yeah, I got a couple cars." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so then he started really introducing me to like more high end cars because like a BMW 7 Series used to be my dream car before I moved to California.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah,
then when I got
you
there and
you
just
realize it was a terrible car, right?
yeah, I,
Man, them 70s
I
is
think it's a
bad.
boat.
Yeah, them
Uh,
70s is bad. They got a lot of
but it was more so like just seeing the other levels of car culture. Like the first time I saw a Pagani Huayra in person, blew my mind. But my buddy, after he sold the Maserati, um, and then he ended up buying a Volkswagen GTI 2015.
mm,
So he started it. He has a black one, murdered it out. Everything was tinted. He ended up putting about like 10 grand into the engine. So the
mm,
GTI was getting like 485 to the wheel,
mm,
which in that car is flying. And so we did a trip to LA one time. And I swear, normally from the Bay Area to LA is about 5.5, 6 hours. I think we were cruising at like 150. And so we did it in like four. Like we stopped for gas and everything and still got there in like 4 hours. Like it was, and I kind of fell in love with that. Like, cause let me drive it and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I need me a GTI. So my other buddies ended up getting one. So then I was the last person to get it. Um, my buddy ended up flipping his, the original dude ended up flipping his. He was following behind a Lamborghini. The Lamborghini slammed brakes. And instead of running into the Lamborghini, he ran the embankment, which then caused his car to flip over and totaled it. So he didn't have to pay the Lamborghini, but because that would have been crazy.
They said he reported that. You hit a what?
Right.
He would have got a dial. He would have got a dial zone from the insurance company. They wouldn't want to hear that. They've been done with
And so then,
that. Sure.
he took uh, once he sold that, he bought a Porsche Carrera, um, souped that up, and now he has a RS3, Audi RS3. When I tell you that thing flies, like I just want to drive it one. But say that to say, I know I love to drive. I love different cars. Uh,
I definitely get it, man. That's always the first freedom that you really engage in is being able to go wherever, however, most reasonably. And as long as you know
mhm,
your vehicle, you know your car, you know how it works, how it moves, how to take care of it, no one can tell you where you need to be besides you. That's beautiful freedom to it, man. So I kind of, even tying it back to what we even discussing on my end with the book piece to it.
mhm,
My hope is, and the way that I kind of positioned this, and if anybody asks me, what this book is supposed to be, yes, it's a conversation that is directed primarily to S types, not necessarily gender specific, but to S type. Um, this is the survival guide, right? It's the hard, and we've been calling it code name the kinky quick, right? Like
mhm,
this is the book that is literally supposed to be able to be that first vehicle to get you from point A to point B. But the first part of this is about inspecting it. What is it? How is it? And in what ways are you capable of moving?
mm,
So yeah, definitely. I think the intersectionality is crazy. As far as the analogies go, for sure. I'm hoping to go ahead if the publishing company says so, and my management work put it correctly. We will have this released by the end of November, and I'm looking
okay,
forward to that. We also have a few launch events happening for the cover coming out mid October in Atlanta. Tickets almost sold out for that. And then we have about a 9-city tour that will be going on in the spring. So I'll be doing that with a few illustrious people, especially my main mentor and manager right now, Candy Marie. She's been phenomenal in helping
mm,
me kind of sculpt this and work with this. Shout out to her. She's been great. And so it's been bringing a vision and an incredible thing to the forefront and being able to meet people on a whole different avenue. People blow me up about this, man, when I'm talking about pro dom and some of my professional sessions, which pro
Mm-hmm.
dom is short for professional dominant, and some of my kink sessions that um, I indulge in, people talk about wanting to do these things with me, and I can only have so many conversations, right? There's only so many hours in the day that I can spend, venturing into this one-on-one thing. So I'm really hoping, very much so that this book impacts, it lasts, it becomes a community staple, it becomes a beginning place and piece for everyone to kind of be get into this lifestyle and becomes that very first bar, man. It gives them that level of freedom of like, okay, it's not just me that does this. I do this too. So it's exciting, yo. I mean, I'm really excited about it, and I really hope that the community accepts it and rejoices in it as much as myself and some of my the Barron's helpers who've been really helpful in terms of the market research and the back and forth and the banter, laughs and tears and cries that it took to kind of put this into production. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it for
No,
sure.
man,
For sure.
that's dope, and I'm definitely gonna to add your book to my library. I have a pretty extensive collection of books that I like to read, and I'm always trying to read and support people that especially when they look like me.
Yeah,
My very
for sure.
my very last question that I like to ask, and this is this one can get kind of deep sometimes, but the last question is, what do you want to be remembered for?
Mm, mm, interesting. Um, for someone who kind of embodies their life behind the understanding of legacy,
Hmm.
the word around legacy, that is a phenomenal question. And truthfully, it is extensively deeper, but the simpler side of it is I would like to be remembered as the type of person who lived life on their own terms, cliche as it sounds, um, who decided so many different ways how they wanted to march to the beat of their own drum.
Hmm.
And whether it was in a personal space like kink or BDSM, whether that was being on the front line, participating in hundreds of civil protests, whether that was me being 16 years old and internationally ranked in chess, to creating a very specific way that I've been strategic throughout a lot of my life. I have always cultivated the energy of being um, the outlaw and being the outlier and the person that always stood by themselves. And it was never about how many people followed. It was always about the quality of the walk in which I embarked. And I live my life by two quotes. And I hope those two quotes resound through my great great grandchildren and anyone else that has come into contact. And that is understanding how to be flexible in your means and steadfast in your goals,
Hmm.
which has embodied my life in so many different ways, for sure. And that ultimately, um, you don't define a leader by how many followers they have. You define a
Hmm.
leader by how many leaders they create.
Hmm.
So that, to me, has been my two guiding stars in how I move throughout my life. I would like my headstone not to say all of that, but when people see the headstone, they feel that.
They think, yeah.
They feel that there were people who have come into contact with me and become the masters of their own universe, captains of their own soul. And I believe that that is the greatest gift.
Well, Baron, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we made it through. And, I really looking forward to when your book comes out. Um, and I'm just really excited for everything that you're working on, man. I'm really glad we had this conversation.